can make it, my friend. You always survive. Fiona should be in. As long as you live, the heart of this army can never be broken.
Things will change, my friend. As heroes, we will return to Russia's embrace.
Freshman year of college was a very strange time in my life. Not only was the world smack in the middle of a pandemic during my fall semester, but I was given the freedom to do assignments that I've never really had before in high school. The biggest example of this was my English 101 class. Although being a complete cakewalk, that's not the subject of this video, but what does loop back around was the topic of the papers I chose to write about. We had complete autonomy when it came to deciding what we wanted to talk about, and since I was, and still very much am, a history buff, I decided to write about World War II in gaming. Now, I don't own a lot of World War II games. I think I actually own 3 since my Call of Duty 3 disc is basically destroyed. I own Enlisted, Call of Duty World War II, and the subject of today's video, Call of Duty World at War. World at War was my first taste of Call of Duty, and 8-year-old Spencer was scared to death. Compared to everything else that came before, World at War is the darkest Call of Duty we'll probably ever get. The dark shades of gray and black, complemented by desaturated colors everywhere you look. The game just feels dark. It feels brutal, but there's no other way to continue. Even when your sergeant is stabbed, he's replaced by Roebuck. When you're abandoned by your superiors and left for dead at a fountain, you scratch and claw your way back into the fight with Reznov. The mood of the campaign takes on either exhaustion or revenge, depending on which faction you're playing with. The Americans in the Pacific are tired of the endless fight island after island, while the Soviets are steadfast on Berlin, led by that man Viktor Reznov. Ooh, he's nice, and is lustful to get their revenge on the horrible acts committed to them on the Eastern Front. The game does not romanticize war, far from it. There is no lovey-dovey squad that banters back and forth, no brightly colored arenas, no dramatic set pieces. It's just war. And according to that image we probably all seen, war is hell. World at War is dark and bleak and filled with black and gray, surrounded by the fires of war. It's a type of narrative where both the banner of the hero and the villain fade away and replaced with the nice shade of gray. There are acts of villainies on every single side because this is what war was. World at War set the boundaries and changed the game away from cavalry to something coated in metal charging towards your trench. So this was the first time ever all of this new technology was used in war, and people found it hard to adapt, so they made these atrocities. If you take a moment to look around, all you see is death. These soldiers have to pick up the pieces of defeats or victories and move on to the next fight. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, Spencer, you just talked about this. This was just a paragraph ago. Well, you would be right. This is a passage from my paper. I told you I would get around to it, and what would be the point of talking about me writing a paper at the start of the video if at least I didn't mention a little bit of it? I also got an A, if anyone's curious. That teacher was a pretty easy grader. The game does not shy away from depicting the brutality and the violence of the conflict. From the horrific imagery of the torture and the violence, all the way to just the simple graphics you see on the battlefield, just a soldier crawling through that little play space. Through its unflinching depiction of war, World at War forces the player to confront the reality of the conflict in a way few other games, especially other Call of Duty World War II games, have done. making it a powerful and just unforgettable experience that is going to stay with players long after the game is over. That's the truth because, well, I'm still talking about it. Because it's hard to forget about a wounded soldier begging for his life or using a flamethrower as someone who tries to pat it down before falling to the ground. AI enemies in Call of Duty have never been the best. Not even in this game because, oh my god, the grenade spam on Veteran was just too much to handle. Whew. But Treyarch seemed to make them more expressive in this game. More so than any other title I've seen in this franchise. It's just another added bonus to an incredible game that makes you really feel like you're experiencing this war on the center stage. Everything is a challenge, from the soldiers trying to snipe you from the trees, to the previously mentioned grenade spam, to the bayonet runs that could ruin your day if there's one more. The guns are clunky and at some points aren't even that effective. It's not like multiplayer where the MP40 reigns supreme. Everything is going to do about the same damage. I always try to stay away from automatics in this game, because I feel like they're just the taddest bit overpowered. When you could use something like the Browning and just destroy an entire group of guys. I like using the M1 Grand or the Gewehr. It adds on a little extra difficulty needed to make this game almost impossible to complete. I have gone back and forth on what campaign is the best for Call of Duty, but I have never left World at War out of my top 5. They nailed everything, and it's why people like me go back to play it as opposed to a game like COD World War II or Vanguard. Gross. It was maybe one of the last times COD was actually difficult to complete on Veteran. Trust me, I've done most of them, and most of them are a breeze. I like 100% in games. I may have not done that for many, but I've gotten close at least. But for me though, I think completing World at War on Veteran years ago is completion enough. So I can really just keep it on my Xbox and go back to it every time I want to experience, well, the World at War. I haven't played it in a long time, but I'm glad I wrote this video so I could capture this gameplay and really fall in love with this game again, already after I enjoyed it so much. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed what I do, maybe consider checking out some of my other content. Thank you so much.